coming. And the topic is traditional yoga for people who are suffering from limb loss or who have serious mobility problems. I'll introduce myself. My name's Mark Workman and I'm 61, and like everyone, I've lived a normal life, done some good things, done some terrible things, systematically destroyed my life at one point, as we all do. And the point of that is there is nothing special about me. What's special is the practice. The ancient practices of yoga are quite extraordinary. They're designed for a particular purpose, but they adapt to just about everything. And the reason they adapt is because of what traditionally yoga is. So we should start, as Socrates would counsel us, first define our terms. What is yoga? Well, we can use the term yoga for anything we want. It's just 2 syllables. And it's pointless to go into a discussion about this yoga is better than that yoga, because when we talk about what is anything, defining a term, we're really talking about what is it that we accept as the authority. You might accept what you think yoga is as the authority, what your teacher taught you. My bias is that I accept what the Yoga Sutra says yoga is as the authority. And I have no argument with anybody who wants to use the term differently, as long as they define it. So what does the Yoga Sutra say yoga is? Fairly good question. Yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Yoga is stopping the whirlpools of the mind. It goes on to say, if you stop the whirlpools of the mind, then you will experience yourself as you really are. And if you don't, you'll identify with the whirlpools of your mind and have a miserable life. How that would apply to people suffering limb loss, to people struggling with pain, and people who are suffering generally is a pretty good question. If you think about it, stopping the mind implies some sort of comfort. Try meditating with a toothache, you'll see what I mean. Try meditating when you're very, very worried about your child who's in considerable trouble. It's going to be very hard. All of the elements of the human condition that affect us affect the way our mind works. And so, whilst yoga is actually a state of mind, that is, when the mind is completely still and single-pointed, yoga practice covers all the aspects of human life, the human struggle, and human suffering. The Yoga Sutra itself says about 2 words about the physical elements of yoga and a great deal about how to manage the mind. So as yoga applied to me, as I was lying in hospital for a year, first of all, it helped me put up with the issues of being there. The physical practices, which essentially focus on the breathing, helped me keep my core strong, my back straight, and some degree of health. And then, of course, the physical movements, which we're all familiar with in yoga, help to keep me going. So what issues affect amputees, people suffering limb loss, and people with serious mobility issues primarily? Okay, we've got the mental problems. You feel a bit miserable about it. It changes your life. But inherently, it's the asymmetry that we have to deal with. If you look at me, got my U-butte red leg, works a treat. I love the thing. But clearly, it's a little bit different from this leg. So every step I take reinforces the asymmetry of my body. Muscles I use to move this leg are considerably different from the ones I use to move this leg. The stabiliser muscles that keep your leg going in a straight direction, or if you're missing an arm, your arm going in a particular direction, are working much harder on this side than that side. So even though I might get going particularly well in my prosthesis with a prosthetic leg or prosthetic arm, the inherent asymmetry begins to affect us. I have a friend, was born without an arm, there's nothing she can't do. But she just had to have an operation because the asymmetry over the course of her life has worn out various parts of her body. So one thing that yoga can do is help us address this asymmetry. How does it do that? Well, Asta practice, which are the postures of yoga, focuses on the spine, the core, pelvis, and shoulder blade, collarbone. If your spine is straight, the pelvis is perpendicular, your collarbone is perpendicular, and this bit's strong, then everything that's hanging off that is kind of going to work properly. But if it's not, you'll end up using your prosthesis as a crutch. You'll end up stronger on one side than the other, which will pull some part of your spine in one direction. Your joints won't be working as they meant to, and you end up in trouble. So that's the ongoing issue. In rehabilitation, what have we first got to do? First got to stand up with our first prosthetic limb on and take a step. If we've been able to prepare our core, our spine, so that we at least have enough strength to hold ourselves taking those steps, we're going to take some nice first steps, and at least in my experience, those first steps are really important. If they're good, terrific, you get confident. But if everything is painful, difficult, and hard from the beginning, clearly that has an effect on the mind. So let's address something of what yoga might be able to do for us physically. It's about symmetry, and it's about keeping this core part of our body in good shape so that we can continue to live a normal, happy life without getting inadvertently increasingly disabled by virtue of the asymmetry of our body. But really, if you really look into it, which is the favourite saying of my teacher A.G. Mohan, if you really look into it, yoga is really about the mind. And the technology of yoga addresses some of the most basic aspects of the human condition. So let's go to breathing and the mind, because that's where I would start if I was teaching, and that's where I recommend everybody starts. Why is that? Well, as a rule, you wake up after you've lost a limb or dealing with any stress, and there's some anxiety, there's some confusion, there's a threat, and your sympathetic nervous system is engaged. Your sympathetic nervous system, otherwise known as your flight and fight response, very useful if you've got to run away from a wolf, which is what it evolved for. Not particularly useful if it's turned on all the time. Why is that? Well, when your sympathetic nervous system is engaged and you feel anxious, frightened, angry, depressed, blood flow goes from your core to your arms and legs so that you can get away from the wolf or win the fight. Your prefrontal cortex, the thing that helps you plan and pause and think properly, shuts down. Why is that? Well, it takes half a tic-tac a minute to run your prefrontal cortex. And you don't need to think about it if you're running away from a wolf or having to fight with someone for your life. You just need to do it. This shuts down. Have you ever been so nervous you can't think properly? That's exactly what's happened. Your sympathetic nervous system's engaged, you're ready to get out of there, and your brain's not working very well. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes along with the activity of the sympathetic nervous system, but from our point of view, it also shuts down your healing and reduces your digestion. So if you are nervous, stressed, anxious, you're not going to heal as well, you're not going to digest your food as well, blood's going to flow in the parts of the body you don't really need it most, and you're not going to think properly. Clearly, not a particularly good situation to be in. How can we change that? Well, fortunately the sympathetic nervous system is a bit of a dumb critter. And if we breathe as though we were asleep, our sympathetic nervous system simply turns off. Fundamental element of yoga breathing. Long exhalation, so twice as long as your inhalation. Do that abdominally for 5 minutes, and your sympathetic nervous system will reduce in activity. It's the fundamental basis for dealing with stress and also for dealing with pain. And we have to deal with pain in the situations that we're in. I mean, I love my leg, but towards the end of the day it gets pretty sore. Pain, it's a very relative thing. It's a very interesting thing to study. One of the key elements of pain is it hurts more the more you're afraid. We're actually afraid of what's going on, then it hurts. So if we can reduce this thing called the sympathetic nervous system, our fight and flight response, it also helps us manage pain. And it's done simply by breathing techniques. Once we've turned off the sympathetic nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system engages, and that's full of all sorts of good things. You can Google it. I need to say no more. That management of our fear, our pain and our anger is a very important part of A, rehabilitation from the beginning of losing a limb, and B, continuing to live. So that's an absolutely essential thing to do. It's managed by breathing, and so is the symmetry of our body. So we can feel more relaxed, reduce pain a bit, and straighten our body by some very simple breathing. And what might that be? Well, I'll give you an introduction. It's quite simple. If I simply breathe in, focusing to breathe in what's called the heart centre. It's not at the front, it's like right in the centre of my chest. You can feel your body adjust if you just focus on breathing in here. When I exhale, I'm going to start from here, which we'll call the pelvic centre. Every tradition has got a different name for this. If you like the yoga tradition, you'll call it the navel chakra, and it's nowhere near the navel. Taoists call it the lower dantian. Let's just call it the pelvic centre. And it's in the centre here, about 3 fingers below your navel, in the middle of you. So if I start to breathe in here, in my heart centre, and begin my exhalation here, in my pelvic centre, and try and keep a straight line. Imagine my breath is going out absolutely straight between here and here. The exhalation will contract the muscles around here. Gently, they'll us build core strength. And we'll use our breath to gently straighten our spine, get our chest a bit symmetrical, and feel a whole lot better. Now really that is the fundamentals of yogic breathing. That's the process for meditation. That's the process for if you're doing asana practice. You might have your timing differently. You might time it with a mantra. You might time it with a metronome. You might count. But essentially that's what we're doing. We're making sure we're breathing through the centre of our body and letting our breath straighten us and strengthen us. And it gets even better than that. We become more relaxed. And we develop the ability to control our emotions at any time. Going out, something dreadful happens, some catastrophe occurs. You can employ that breathing, relax, get a little bit more focused on the job at hand, and perhaps get through the exercise a bit more gracefully. So, another really important thing is to join this idea of proper breathing to the exercise of yoga asana, yoga postures. Something you might realise yourselves if you just practice it for a second. When you exhale, your body relaxes. So if you just sit down, inhale here, don't be, just gently, don't have to ever push anything. And as you exhale, just release your shoulders. Exhale slowly and just let your shoulders go. And let them sink down. And inhale into your heart centre again. And as you exhale, allow your shoulders to sink and your body to relax. What are we doing here? We're making use of a straightforward piece of our biology. Our body relaxes when we exhale. So if we emphasise the exhalation, we're going to emphasise the relaxation of our body. If our muscles are relaxed, our joints have less pressure, we're able to move more freely, do more stuff. So again, the heart of yoga is breathing properly. When we do asana practice, therefore, yoga postures, we use the exhalation to get that extra piece of movement. Not force, never force. And especially for people who are struggling with some form of mobility issue, force is not a very good idea at all. But I'll just demonstrate with a simple seated forward bend. I'll inhale and exhale. Now I'll stay here and breathe. And you may have noticed that taking that breath while I was in the middle of the forward bend, on the exhalation, my body bent forward a little bit more. I put no effort in, simply the weight of my body and the natural relaxation that goes along with that exhalation, and that's what increases the movement. So anytime we're trying to increase movement, we need to keep our body relaxed and allow its natural processes to increase the movement. Why not force? There's a lot of yoga about the place which is a bit extravagant. Historically, there are some reasons for that, and I don't want to get involved in the politics of historical yoga, but two of the stronger versions of yoga that are internationally well known were introduced to the world by people who learnt from Sri T. Krishnamacharya when they were teenage boys. And they had practices that were appropriate for teenage boys. Right? They had to be pretty athletic and pretty complicated to keep concentrating. A practice that's appropriate for a 16 or 18-year-old boy is not appropriate for a 60-year-old woman. To design a yoga practice, we have to take three things into account. Person, what can they do? Purpose, what's the point? And that will give us the practice. So when we're looking at all these extravagant postures, anyone dealing with real issues, we don't need to concern ourselves with them. What we need to concern ourselves with is staying relaxed, staying straight, staying calm, and applying that state of mind to getting on and having a decent life. And so, what is that state of mind and getting on with a decent life? The goal of yoga practice, as I understand it, from the Yoga Sutras and the people that taught me, which is my bias, is a state of svastha. Svastha is a Sanskrit word that means calm, energetic focus. That's our goal. to be able to get on with the business of rehabilitation, the business of getting around the place with our very expensive technological limbs, calmly, energetically, with enough focus to get the job done. To that end, perhaps we could design a practice for people that can't even stand up, which is unsurprisingly what I did for myself in hospital. And how would we start to do that? Well, I'll give you a few demos so that you know what it is that I might start teaching. If we're going to look at this business of having a good spine, strong core, we need to move our spine. Pretty straightforward. We need to move it back. We need to move it forward. We might need to move it to the side. And we'll need to twist it. That's a bit of a trick when sitting in a chair. Don't do this. Your body is not set up properly to twist sitting in a chair. But certainly, take your chest to your knee, and move your spine through a slightly twisted movement. And then we might apply the principle that we follow asymmetrical movements with symmetrical movements, so I'll complete that with a forward bend. And if we did it all with the breathing that I described before, maybe did 3, 4, 5, 6 of each of those movements, we would have done a fairly nice little yoga practice. Sitting on the edge of our bed, sitting in our wheelchair, sitting in a chair, sitting anywhere. And if we want to get really exciting, we can add a bit of qigong. To really energise and bring our upper body to life. So, thanks for listening. I think that's about all I need to say now. Please feel free to get in contact. And if you do any of the things that I've said, do them gently. Safety is absolutely the key. The maximum you want to feel is a strong, comfortable stretch. The maximum you want to breathe is 80% of how much you can breathe in and 80% of how much you can breathe out. Go gently. Yoga is a process. If you push yourself and force yourself, all you've got is one set of muscles fighting against another set of muscles. If you feel pain, your muscles will contract to protect themselves. Do it gently, do it slowly, look after yourself. If you want to learn some more, get in touch. Thanks very much.